So I enjoyed your talk. That's, I think,
Thank you.
really showcasing nicely the opportunity of voice, specifically in healthcare.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited for voice to become a more mass adopted technology because right now it really is early days for consumers. It's been only 3 years, I think, as far as when people have actually had access to devices. But it's something that we're actually seeing an even faster adoption of physicians. 23% was the number that we pulled in the presentation, but that's how many physicians are using these devices daily already.
And it should be a pretty quick uptake. You know, there's nothing more natural than this, right? Talking to
exactly.
each other.
And especially the ability to multitask. If you're, running around day after day and don't have time to, Google or find your rep's phone number or whatnot, it's fantastic just to be able to say, "Hey Alexa" or "Hey Brand."
We're really excited about the use of voice in terms of content creation.
Yes.
So now imagine kind of talking to the screen or your computer to kind of co-create in a very interactive way, much like we're doing. So.
And you had a talk as well. I was fortunate to catch, and it was fascinating to hear you really talk about that co-creation between a human versus a machine.
So we took the opportunity to really define what that relationship looks like. One, we found this really interesting nugget before Jim Henson of the Muppets fame did the Muppets. He was commissioned by AT&T to do experimental video on exactly that. What's the relationship between human and, in that case, robots? That was over 50 years ago, and I think we're still having a similar conversation on what exactly is the right role between the two. And we kind of broke it down into the role of an assistant, the role of kind of a peer, and then the highest order, kind of the role of a muse, this source of inspiration.
And so do you see there being any boundaries to how people and machines can work together, or do you really think it's this almost untapped green field?
Pretty exciting, and I think voice is a great example of just playing around with it and becoming a practitioner. Start to, it's this era of experimentation now. So it's the early days, and it's going to be fast. One thing we talked a lot about was predicting the future. You just can't, right, from a technology standpoint. So the one thing you can predict is constant change, and I'm sure you see that a lot in the voice world as well.
And so I was particularly fascinated by your talk just because it's something that, at least in healthcare, we think is so important for technology, being able to not only predict what it's going to say, but also really implementing a very humanistic feel. And that's where I think, at least with chatbots and voice bots as a technology, I think there's this amazing power for having a human actually create that experience and the technology to supplement it and bring it to that next level.
And you bring up the key word, right? Experience.
Yes.
Ultimately, if you look at what's happening in the digital marketplace, it's kind of given rise to the experience economy. And technology is great, but it's in service of creating great experiences, whether it be for a consumer or a patient or for an HCP. So what are you most excited about in the voice world? I think we've seen some really kind of experimental, interesting things in terms of voice assistants. Where do you see it going beyond that?
One of the really amazing powers is going to be in Omnichannel. So this is where you can have both a text or voice-based bot ultimately talking to each other. And where I think it becomes really impactful is actually quantifying it in relations to other initiatives you're doing as well. Not only the innovations that are maybe seeking a little bit more attention nowadays, but how do they relate to the digital strategies that you've already invested in, the ones that you're maybe sending out emails or have different digital properties. And I think it's really going to be powerful to actually connect all those voices and have one persona as if
to that point,
brands.
Some pretty exciting things happening in the kind of telemedicine world, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, having a voice device be able to actually tap into telemedicine and be able to have it all centralized in one place is going to be very powerful.
And then you combine that with the ability to create with voice and then AR, really magical times, I think.
Yeah.